My psycho parents tried to replace my twin sister after she had an accident, so I exposed their darkest secret and ran for my life. Me and my twin sister Katie are like the sun and the moon. On the days I refused to eat, she'd quietly leave a small bowl of sliced strawberries drizzled with melted chocolate by my bedside, knowing it was the one thing I could never resist. She was the only one who ever got me. And one day, we were in the car with my parents with "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" playing when we saw a car speed towards us. My mom's reaction time was too slow, but my sister's wasn't. She knew we both weren't wearing seatbelts, but instead of buckling herself in, she reached across to secure me right as the impact happened. And just 8 days later, I was standing at her grave in a black dress that still had the tags on. I never stopped setting her place at the table. And on the days I felt lonely, which was pretty much all the time, I'd go into her room and spray her warm vanilla sugar bath and bodywork spray and pretend like she was still there, listening to me, holding me while I cried. And just a year later, she came back from the dead. Or at least, that's what my parents wanted me to believe, because that's when they adopted a 14-year-old girl 3 months older than me. Michaela was bubbly, had a gummy smile, strawberry blonde hair, outspoken, the kind of girl to pet every dog she passed by. But she still wasn't Katie. But even though I still felt like there was a gray cloud looming over my head every day, I didn't want to be the one to bring the mood down for everyone. So I started spending more and more time alone in my room. Every day I had the same routine: noise-canceling headphones, listening to the same 5 Sam Smith songs on repeat, and crying until my face was swollen. And sometimes if I wanted to cheer myself up, I'd go to Katie's Spotify profile and listen to every single song while reading the lyrics, trying to picture what she felt as she listened to each one too. Meanwhile, I could always hear my parents having a blast downstairs. They'd laugh, chat with Michaela about how school went for her that day, and play Xbox games together. By that point, they had gotten rid of all the photo frames of Katie, and if I ever tried to bring her up, they'd look at me with disgust, as if just saying her name was enough to cause another death. It was like she had never existed. As the months passed, I got more and more depressed. I'd wake up in the morning after sleeping for 14 hours and try to go back to sleep so I wouldn't have to deal with the pain the day had to offer. And when it didn't work, I would purposely starve myself all day, just so I'd be able to sleep for longer. And to my parents, I was nothing more than a walking reminder of the loss of their daughter. So they started spending less time with me and more time with Michaela. They stopped inviting me to the family movie nights. I'd simply hear popcorn popping and Michaela's laughter echoing downstairs. I know they could hear me crying every night because I didn't even try to hide it. But the only one who came to comfort me was my orange cat Nyla, who'd sit on my chest and purr until I finally stopped hyperventilating. She was the only one awake at 2 a.m. as I replayed memories with Katie to make sure I never forgot how she made me feel. Things got so bad that sometimes I'd bring Nyla into the room to stop myself from committing self-unalive because I knew I could never do it in front of her. And one morning when I woke up to feed her, she was gone. I shook her food bowl and went to all the usual spots: under the sink, under my bed, the gap between the washing machine and the dryer. It was like she had disappeared or something. And that's when my parents broke the news. Oh, Michaela developed a pretty bad allergic reaction towards Nyla, so we put her down since she was getting old anyway. I didn't even argue, just walked up to Katie's bedroom and cuddled her pillow while I cried my eyes out. If you've ever experienced raw and intense grief, then you know about the intense hunger you feel to uncover more about what they were feeling and thinking before they died. And that hunger is what led me to come across a pink leather notebook I had never seen before. Her diary. Jackpot. I clung onto every word and read it through the eyes of Katie, picturing the thought process behind every sentence. And after getting through pages about dumb boys at school, or how much she hated math homework, I found it. Paragraphs about how our parents were abusing her when I wasn't around, taking all their anger out on her, how she forced herself to look strong and happy when I was around, and her last sentences sent chills up my spine. Up until this point, our dad was hitting her relentlessly, and Katie finally fought back. She yelled at them for being shitty parents. "Maybe it's time you learned how fragile life really is, Katie," my mom said in response. That was her last diary entry. Suddenly, it all made sense, and why my parents were able to replace her so quickly. Why Katie had been so quick to react in the car that day. She knew what was coming. She wasn't just saving me from the crash, she was saving me from them. I sat there frozen for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the diary. Everything started clicking into place. The accident wasn't an accident at all. My parents had planned it. They wanted to get rid of Katie because she was fighting back. I felt sick to my stomach. Memories flooded back. Times when Katie seemed jumpy around our parents, when she insisted on being the one to talk to them when something went wrong. How she always positioned herself between me and them during arguments. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs and quickly shoved the diary under Katie's mattress. My mom poked her head in the doorway. "Dinner's ready. Michaela made lasagna," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I noticed for the first time how cold those eyes really were, like 2 chips of ice in her face. I nodded and mumbled something about coming down soon. As soon as she left, I grabbed the diary again and took pictures of the most important pages with my phone. I needed evidence. I needed proof. Because now I was terrified that I might be next. My hands trembled so badly that some of the photos came out blurry, but I kept trying until I had clear images of every damning page. The next morning at breakfast, I watched my parents carefully. They seemed so normal, laughing at something Michaela said about her science teacher. How could they act like this after what they'd done? I barely touched my food, just pushed it around my plate. The scrambled eggs looked like yellow rubber, and the toast might as well have been cardboard. "You should eat something," my dad said, noticing my full plate. "You're getting too skinny." His concern seemed so genuine that for a second I almost doubted what I'd read. Almost. The concern in his voice made my skin crawl. I remembered what Katie had written about him hitting her, and I couldn't look him in the eye. I stared at his hands instead, the same hands that had hurt my sister, now casually holding a coffee mug. The threat wasn't lost on me. Someone meant a therapist, which meant they could convince people I was unstable. I forced myself to eat a few bites just to get them off my back, swallowing past the lump of fear in my throat. After breakfast, I went back to Katie's room. I needed to read more of the diary to understand everything that had happened, but when I reached under the mattress, it wasn't there. I tore the room apart looking for it, but the diary was gone. I pulled up the sheets, checked under the bed, emptied the drawers. Nothing. The panic rising in my chest made it hard to breathe. Michaela's expression changed slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe your mom took it when she was cleaning." I didn't believe her for a second. My mom never cleans Katie's room. I'm the only one who goes in there. I stood there fuming, trying to decide what to do next. I still had the photos on my phone, but I needed the actual diary. It was the only real proof I had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Katie, about the car crash, about my parents' strange behavior since then. I pulled out my phone to look at the diary pages I'd photographed, but when I opened my gallery, the photos were gone. All of them. Not just the diary pages, but every single photo I'd taken in the last year, including the ones of Katie and me together. I nearly screamed in frustration. Someone had deleted them all, and I had a pretty good idea who it was. The next morning, I confronted Michaela before school. I cornered her in the bathroom while she was doing her makeup. She finally turned to face me. "Look, they think it's unhealthy how you're clinging to Katie's memory. They want you to move on." But the damage was done. I could see it in her face. She was going to tell them. I knew I had to act fast. After Michaela left the bathroom, I grabbed my backpack and ran to school instead of taking the bus. I needed time to think with without her watching my every move. The whole walk there, my mind raced with everything I'd learned. My parents had called Katie. They'd replaced her with Michaela. And now they were erasing any evidence that Katie had ever existed. During first period, I couldn't focus on anything the teacher was saying. I kept thinking about the diary and the deleted photos. I needed to get that diary back. I also needed to make copies of the evidence somewhere Michaela couldn't access. The bell rang, and I practically sprinted to the computer lab during my free period. I created a new email account with a password that had nothing to do with me or Katie. Then I wrote down everything I remembered from the diary, every detail about the abuse Katie had suffered. I sent the email to myself and then deleted it from the sent folder. At least now I had something, even if it wasn't the actual diary. When I got home that afternoon, my parents were waiting for me in the living room. Michaela sat between them, looking smug. My stomach dropped. "We need to talk about your behavior," my dad said. His voice was calm, but I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Michaela told us you've been accusing us of some pretty terrible things." I glanced at Michaela, who quickly looked down at her hands. The little snitch had told them everything, just like I knew she would. "I didn't accuse anyone of anything," I said carefully. "I just asked about Katie's diary." My mom's face hardened. "There is no diary. You're making things up again." Again? When had I ever made anything up? I felt my hands start to shake, so I shoved them in my pockets. "We're worried about you," my dad continued. "You've been isolating yourself, not eating, talking about Katie like she's still here. And now these accusations. We think you need help," my mom finished. "Professional help." I knew what that meant. They wanted to lock me up somewhere, convince everyone I was crazy, just like they'd probably planned to do with Katie before the accident. "I'm fine," I insisted. "I just miss my sister." "It's been over a year," my mom said sharply. "It's time to move on. Michaela is your sister now." I looked at Michaela, who gave me a small, triumphant smile. She wasn't my sister. She would never be my sister. "I have homework," I muttered, heading for the stairs. No one tried to stop me. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep before sneaking into Michaela's room. I needed to find that diary. I searched everywhere. Under her mattress, in her drawers, in her backpack, nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed her trash can. There, torn into pieces, were the pages of Katie's diary. My heart sank. I gathered up as many pieces as I could and took them back to my room. I spent hours trying to piece them back together, but it was useless. Too many pieces were missing, and the ones I had were too small to make sense of. I sat on my bed and cried silently, missing Nyla more than ever. She would have curled up beside me, purring until I calmed down. The next morning at breakfast, Michaela was extra chipper. "I made pancakes for everyone," she announced, setting a plate in front of me. I stared at the food, not trusting anything she made. "Eat up," my dad said, his tone making it clear it wasn't a suggestion. I took a small bite. The pancakes tasted normal, but I still only ate half of one. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were trying to substance me or something. Maybe I was being paranoid, but after what I'd learned about Katie, I didn't trust any of them. At school, I decided to reach out to our old family friend, Mrs. Peterson. She had been close with our family before Katie died, but I hadn't seen her much since then. She taught English at our school, and I knew she had a free period after lunch. I found her in her classroom grading papers. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. "Well, this is a nice surprise. How are you doing, sweetheart?" I hesitated, not sure how much to tell her. "Not great, actually. I found something of Katie's, and now it's gone." Mrs. Peterson's smile faded. "What do you mean?" "I found her diary," I said quietly, "but someone took it and tore it up." She set down her pen. "That's terrible. What did it say that was so important?" I took a deep breath. It said our parents were hurting her, physically, and that they threatened her right before the accident. Mrs. Peterson's face went pale. "That's a very serious accusation." "I know," I said, "but it's true. And now they've adopted this girl, Michaela, and they're trying to make me forget Katie ever existed. They even put down my cat because Michaela claimed she was allergic." Mrs. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. "Have they hurt you?" she finally asked. I shook my head. Number Katie protected me. She always made sure they took everything out on her instead. Mrs. Peterson stood up and closed her classroom door. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning." So I did. I told her about finding the diary, about the photos being deleted, about the torn pages in Michaela's trash. I told her about my parents threatening to send me to therapy, about how they'd erased all traces of Katie from our house. By the time I finished, the bell had rung for the next period, but Mrs. Peterson wrote me a note excusing my tardiness. "I believe you," she said, and those 3 words nearly made me cry with relief. "But we need evidence. Without the diary, it's your word against theirs." "I know," I said miserably, "and they're already setting me up to look crazy." Mrs. Peterson thought for a moment. "Do you have a phone? One they don't have access to?" I nodded. "They don't know my passcode." "Good. Start documenting everything. Record conversations if you can. Take pictures of anything suspicious. And most importantly, be careful. Don't confront them directly." I promised I would be careful, and headed to my next class feeling slightly better. At least someone believed me now. That afternoon, I came home to find Michaela in my room, sitting on my bed and flipping through one of my notebooks. I froze in the doorway. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She looked up, not even pretending to be embarrassed, just looking for something. "In my private notebook?" She shrugged. "Your mom asked me to check on you. She's worried about your mental state." I snatched the notebook from her hands. "Get out of my room." Michaela stood up slowly. "You know, they told me you might be difficult, that you never accepted Katie's death, but I didn't realize how bad it was. I've accepted that she's dead," I said through gritted teeth. "What I haven't accepted is how quickly everyone forgot about her, or how convenient it was that she died right after our parents threatened her." Michaela's eyes widened slightly, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Cross her face. But then she was back to her usual smug self. "You should be careful what you say," she warned. "They're already talking about sending you to a special school for troubled teens." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Yep, somewhere you can get the help you need." She made air quotes around the word help. "Personally, I think it's a great idea. This house would be so much more peaceful without you moping around all the time." She brushed past me and out the door, leaving me standing there in shock. They wanted to send me away, just like they'd gotten rid of Katie, just like they'd gotten rid of Nyla. I needed to act fast. That night, I set up my phone to record while we ate dinner. I hid it in my hoodie pocket, hoping to catch something, anything that would prove what they were planning. Dinner was tense. My parents kept exchanging glances, and Michaela kept smirking at me across the table. I pushed my food around my plate, not trusting it. "Not hungry again?" my mom asked, her voice falsely sweet. "I had a big lunch," I lied. "You need to eat to keep your strength up," my dad said, "especially with everything coming up." I looked up sharply. "What's coming up?" Another glance between my parents. "We've been talking," my mom said carefully, "and we think it might be good for you to spend some time at a special school, just for a little while." "A special school?" I repeated flatly. "You mean a mental institution?" "It's not like that," my dad insisted. "It's a place for teens who are struggling with grief and other issues." "What other issues?" I demanded. Your delusions, for one, my mom said, dropping the sweet act. Your accusations. Your refusal to accept reality. My reality is that my twin sister died in a car crash that wasn't an accident, I said, my voice rising. My reality is that you two threatened her right before it happened. My reality is that you're trying to erase her and replace her with this stranger. I pointed at Michaela, who gasped dramatically. See what I mean? She said to my parents. She's been saying horrible things like this for weeks. My dad slammed his hand on the table, making the plates jump. That's enough. You will not speak to your sister that way. She's not my sister, I shouted. Katie was my sister. Katie, who you abused and then unalived. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom's face had gone white, and my dad's had turned an ugly shade of red. Michaela looked between them, suddenly uncertain. Go to your room, my dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. Now, I stood up, knocking my chair over in the process. Gladly, but don't think this is over. I stormed upstairs and locked my door, heart pounding. I'd said too much. I'd shown my hand, but at least I had the conversation recorded. I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording, then played it back. My heart sank. The sound was muffled, the voices barely audible. You couldn't make out what anyone was saying clearly enough for it to be useful. I deleted the recording and flopped onto my bed, trying not to panic. They were going to send me away. I needed evidence, and I needed it now. The next day was Saturday, which meant I was trapped in the house with them all day. My parents acted like nothing had happened at dinner, but there was a new tension in the air. Michaela kept giving me these little smirks when they weren't looking, like she knew something I didn't. I stayed in my room most of the day trying to come up with a plan. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I tensed, expecting my dad or Michaela, but it was my mom. Can we talk? She asked, her voice gentle in a way it hadn't been in months. I nodded warily, and she sat on the edge of my bed. I know things have been hard for you since Katie died, she began, and I know we haven't always been the most understanding. I stared at her, not trusting this sudden change. But we love you, she continued. We only want what's best for you. This school we're considering. It's a good place. They can help you work through your grief in a healthy way. I don't need help, I said. I need people to believe me. My mom sighed. Believe what, exactly? That we somehow caused the accident? That we hurt Katie? These are serious accusations, and they're simply not true. I read her diary, I insisted. She wrote it all down. This imaginary diary, my mom said, her voice hardening slightly. The one you can't produce. Because Michaela destroyed it. My mom stood up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These paranoid delusions about Michaela, about us. It's not healthy. It's not a delusion, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. We've made an appointment for you to talk to someone on Monday, my mom said. A psychiatrist. If you cooperate, maybe we won't need to consider the school option. After she left, I sat on my bed, feeling defeated. They were going to have me declared mentally unstable. No one would believe me then. I needed to find evidence, and I needed to find it now. I spent the rest of the day searching the house whenever I could do so without being noticed. I looked in my parents' room, in their office, in the garage. Nothing. No sign of Katie's diary. No sign of any evidence that might support what I'd read. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen on Monday. Would they substance me, lock me up, make me disappear like they'd made Katie disappear? Around midnight, I heard a soft knock on my door. I froze, not answering. The knock came again, followed by Michaela's voice. I know you're awake, she whispered. Let me in. I need to talk to you. I hesitated, then got up and opened the door a crack. What do you want? Michaela looked different. Her usual smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Can I come in, please? Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on my desk chair, wringing her hands nervously. I heard them talking, she said quietly, about the psychiatrist appointment on Monday. Yeah, so? You're getting what you wanted. They're going to lock me up. Michaela shook her head. That's not what I wanted. Not really. I stared at her, confused. What are you talking about? You've been helping them this whole time. I know, she said miserably, but I didn't know what they were really like when I agreed to the adoption. They seemed so nice, so perfect, the kind of parents I always dreamed of having. And now, I prompted when she fell silent. Now I'm scared, she admitted. The way they talk about you when you're not around. It's not right, and I found something. My heart skipped a hit. What? Michaela reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. I was looking for my charger in your dad's office, and I found this in a locked drawer. The key was hidden in a fake book on the shelf. What's on it? I asked, taking the drive from her. Videos, she said, of them, hurting Katie. I felt sick. You watched them? She nodded, tears filling her eyes. Just one. I couldn't watch anymore. It was horrible. I stared at the USB drive in my hand, not sure if I wanted to see what was on it, but I knew I had to. This was the evidence I needed. Why are you helping me now? I asked suspiciously. After everything you've done? Michaela looked down. Because I realized they're doing to you what they did to Katie, and eventually they'll do it to me too. I'm just the replacement after all. Once they're tired of me, she didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew what she meant. We need to get out of here, I said. Both of us. Before Monday. Michaela nodded. I have some money saved. Not much, but enough for bus tickets maybe. Where would we go? My old foster mom, Michaela suggested. She was nice. She'd help us, I think. I wasn't sure if I trusted Michaela yet, but I didn't have many options. And if she was telling the truth about the USB drive, we had the evidence we needed to make sure my parents faced consequences for what they'd done to Katie. Okay, I agreed. We'll leave tomorrow night after they go to bed. Michaela nodded and stood up to leave. At the door, she paused. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for everything. I didn't know what they were really like. After she left, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop, bracing myself for what I might see. There were dozens of video files, each labeled with a date. The most recent was from just a week before the accident. With shaking hands, I clicked on it. The video showed Katie in her room, crying as my dad yelled at her. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I closed the laptop, feeling sick, but now I had proof. Irrefutable proof of what they'd done to Katie. I copied the files to my own hidden folder, then to the cloud account I'd created. Then I hid the USB drive under my mattress and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow, Michaela and I would escape, and then we'd make sure my parents paid for what they'd done to Katie. The next day dragged on forever. My parents were acting suspiciously nice, which only made me more nervous. Michaela played along, pretending everything was normal. We'd agreed to meet in my room at midnight after my parents were asleep. At dinner, my mom announced she'd made my favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs. I pushed the food around my plate, not trusting it. You need to eat, my dad insisted. You have a big day tomorrow. The way he said it made my skin crawl. What exactly were they planning for this psychiatrist appointment? I'm not hungry, I said. Just a few bites, my mom urged. For me? To avoid suspicion, I took a small bite. The sauce tasted bitter, and I immediately knew something was wrong. I discreetly spit it back onto my plate when no one was looking. Actually, I'm not feeling well, I said, pushing my plate away. I think I'll go lie down. My parents exchanged a look. I'll bring you some tea, my mom offered. No thanks, I said quickly. I just need to sleep. I went upstairs and locked my door, then texted Michaela. Don't eat the food. I think it's drugged. A few minutes later, she texted back. Too late, feeling dizzy. My heart sank. Without Michaela, I'd have to escape on my own, and I'd have to do it tonight before whatever they had planned for tomorrow. I packed a small bag with essentials, clothes, toiletries, the USB drive, and what little money I had saved. Then I waited, listening for any sign that my parents had gone to bed. Around 10 p.m., I heard them come upstairs. My mom knocked on my door. door. Are you feeling any better? A little, I lied. I'm just going to sleep. Okay, sweetie, we'll check on you in the morning. I waited another hour until the house was completely silent. Then I quietly unlocked my door and peeked out. The hallway was dark and empty. I tiptoed to Michaela's room and gently pushed open the door. She was sprawled across her bed, still fully dressed, snoring softly. I tried to shake her awake, but she just mumbled incoherently. Whatever they'd put in the food had knocked her out completely. I had to leave her behind. I hated to do it, especially after she tried to help me, but I had no choice. I left a note on her nightstand. I had to go. The USB drive has the evidence. Get it to the police if I don't make it. Then I crept downstairs, careful to avoid the steps that creaked. The house was eerily quiet. I made it to the front door and was about to unlock it when a light switched on behind me. Going somewhere? My dad asked. I spun around. He was sitting in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't look surprised to see me with my backpack. I stammered. Running away? He suggested. That's not very grateful after everything we've done for you. I backed up against the door. What have you done for me? You unalived my sister. You erased her from our lives. You're trying to replace her with Michaela. My dad stood up slowly. We gave you a perfect life, a perfect sister. And this is how you repay us? Katie was perfect, I said. She was perfect, and you hurt her, and then you unalived her. Katie was weak, my dad spat. She couldn't take discipline. She fought back. But you've always been the good one, the obedient one, until recently. He took a step toward me, and I fumbled for the door handle behind me. Stay away from me. You're not going anywhere, he said, especially not with that USB drive you think we don't know about. My blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow, they knew. Michaela told us everything, my dad continued. About your little escape plan, about the evidence you think you have. Michaela had betrayed me. Again. Or had she? Maybe they'd forced it out of her after drugging her. Either way, I was trapped. It doesn't matter, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I've already sent copies of the videos to other people. If anything happens to me, they'll go to the police. It was a lie, but my dad's face darkened with doubt. You're bluffing. Am I? Are you willing to take that chance? For a moment, we stared at each other in silence. Then my dad lunged forward, grabbing my arm. I screamed and kicked, managing to break free. I ran for the kitchen, looking for a weapon, anything to defend myself. My dad followed, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you. I grabbed a knife from the counter and pointed it at him. Stay back. I swear I'll use it. He laughed, a cold, cruel sound. You don't have the guts. You're not like Katie. She had fire. You're just a pathetic copy. I'm nothing like Katie, I agreed. But that doesn't mean I won't protect myself. My dad took another step forward, and I slashed the knife through the air. He jumped back, surprised. In that moment, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My mom appeared in the doorway, her face pale. What's going on? She demanded. Our daughter is threatening me with a knife, my dad said, his voice eerily calm now. After trying to run away, my mom looked at me, then at the knife in my hand. Put that down, now. No, I said. Not until you admit what you did to Katie. We didn't do anything to Katie, my mom insisted. She died in a car accident, an accident you would have died in too if she hadn't saved you. She saved me from you, I shouted. She knew what was coming. She knew you were planning to hurt us. This is ridiculous, my mom said. You're having some kind of breakdown. Put down the knife and we can get you help. I don't need help, I said. I need the truth. I've seen the videos. I know what you did to her. My parents exchanged a look. What videos? My dad asked, too casually. The ones on the USB drive, the ones showing you hurting Katie. My mom's face hardened. There are no videos. There never were. This is just another one of your delusions. But I could see the fear in her eyes. She was lying. I've already sent them to Mrs. Peterson, I bluffed. She has everything. The videos, Katie's diary entries, everything. My mom's face went white. You're lying. Call her and find out, I challenged. Or better yet, call the police. I'm sure they'd be very interested in those videos. My dad took a step toward me, but my mom put a hand on his arm. Wait, she said. We need to think about this. There's nothing to think about, my dad growled. She's bluffing. And if she's not? My mom hissed. If she really sent those videos to someone? They were scared. For the first time, they were actually scared. I pressed my advantage. I'll make you a deal, I said. Let me leave. Let me go stay with Mrs. Peterson. Don't try to stop me. Don't try to have me committed. And those videos stay private. My parents looked at each other, having some silent conversation I couldn't interpret. Finally, my mom nodded. Fine, my dad said. Go, but if those videos ever see the light of day, you'll regret it. I backed toward the door, keeping the knife pointed at them. I'll be watching you. If anything happens to Michaela, if you try to hurt anyone else, the videos go public. I made it to the front door and fumbled it open, never taking my eyes off my parents. They stood in the hallway, watching me with cold eyes. I backed out onto the porch, then turned and ran. I ran all the way to Mrs. Peterson's house about a mile away. It was after midnight when I rang her doorbell, gasping for breath. She answered in a bathrobe, her face concerned. What on earth? She began, then saw my face. Come in, quickly. I collapsed on her couch, still clutching the knife. Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened when she saw it. What happened? She asked. Between sobs, I told her everything. About the drugged food, about Michaela's betrayal, about the confrontation with my parents. I showed her the USB drive, and she plugged it into her computer. We watched one video together, both of us crying by the end. Mrs. Peterson hugged me tightly. You're safe now, she promised. They can't hurt you anymore. The next morning, Mrs. Peterson called the police. They came and took my statement, and I gave them the USB drive. They promised to investigate, to check on Michaela, to make sure my parents couldn't hurt anyone else. It turned out Michaela hadn't betrayed me after all. My parents had found the USB drive missing and assumed I had taken it. They had drugged both of us at dinner, but I hadn't eaten enough to be affected. The police found Michaela still drugged in her bed. They took her to the hospital, where she eventually woke up and confirmed my story. She told them about finding the USB drive, about our plan to escape, about how my parents had been manipulating both of us. With the videos as evidence, plus our testimonies, my parents were arrested. The investigation revealed that the car accident hadn't been an accident at all. My dad had tampered with the brakes, expecting both Katie and me to die. Katie's quick thinking had saved my life, even as she sacrificed her own. Michaela and I both went into foster care, but we stayed in touch. She apologized for her role in my parents' manipulation, explaining that they had promised her a perfect family if she helped them manage me. She hadn't known the full extent of their plans until it was almost too late. As for me, I finally got to properly mourn Katie. I visited her grave every week, bringing her favorite flowers and telling her about my life. I kept her diary. The police had found the torn pieces and helped me piece it back together, and read it when I missed her most. And sometimes, on the hardest days, I swear I could feel her presence beside me, her hand on my shoulder, her voice in my ear, telling me everything would be okay. And for the first time since the accident, I believed it.